Hi guys, welcome back to another Word to the Wise Wednesday. This week we are tackling a subject that I have wanted to talk about for some time, but it is a big one. Active and passive voice in your writing. When I was a new, inexperienced copywriter, my boss was extremely frustrated with me because I tended to write in passive voice all the time. I thought it sounded professional. I thought it sounded formal and businesslike. But in truth, passive voice just feels distant. It's almost never the right choice. The trick with this is it's not always easy to tell whether or not you're writing in passive voice. So we're going to go through some examples, describe things, and I'll try to break it down so it's easy as possible to understand. When you write in active voice, your writing is clear. It engages the reader. It's easy to understand. And most importantly, it puts the subject of the sentence at the beginning, doing the action. In passive voice, the feel of your writing is more distant. It pushes the subject away. So all the action is being done to the subject of the sentence. Let's look at one example to kind of try to describe this. Bill congratulated the C-Point team for their hard work and perseverance. That's active voice. The subject of the sentence is Bill, and you can see very easily he congratulated the team. However, passive voice structures the sentence completely differently. For their hard work and perseverance, the C-Point team was congratulated by Bill. You can see how this really pulls the subject of the sentence away. Everything seems kind of formal and a little distant. Here's another example. In active voice, Dan ate almost all of the dozen donuts. We can clearly see Dan is the one to blame. In passive voice, the sentence would read, almost all of the dozen donuts were eaten. You don't even have to mention the subject. When you write, almost always you're going to want to choose active voice. There's one exception to this in most cases, and that's when you're writing to someone and they've done something wrong. They're actually to blame and you'd like to say something to mention the problem, but you don't want to push the blame on them. In that case, passive voice works beautifully. So going back to that example, Dan ate almost all of the dozen donuts. You don't want to pin the blame on Dan, sorry Dan, but you do want to mention that the donuts disappeared. So that's why passive voice is good. However, if you're writing for marketing purposes, you really want to make a connection with your reader. You want the person who's reading your blog, who's reading the content on your website, you want them to feel like they're part of it, and that's why active voice is so useful. Here's an example. Courtney and Kristy set up a new style guide for the client. The subjects of the sentence are Courtney and Kristy. You can quickly tell that they are the ones who performed the action. But in passive voice, a new style guide was set up for the client. It feels distant. We don't know who did the action. We just know that there's a style guide that happened to be set up. This almost never works well for your marketing writing. If you're wanting to determine, you've got a paragraph written and you want to say, have I written in passive voice? Because it is very common. Here's how you can identify it. Ask yourself if there's action going on in the sentence. If there's action, what's at the front of the sentence? Is it the person doing the action? If so, it's active voice. If at the beginning of the sentence, it's something being done to the subject, you're writing in passive voice. And sometimes when you're writing in passive voice, it just sounds plain awkward. And it almost always sounds better to write in active voice. For example, Bill really loved the paint job in his office. That's active voice. It makes sense, it's clear, it's easy to understand. Passive voice, the sentence would read, the paint job in Bill's office was loved by him. See how it just kind of pulls things apart? It feels awkward, it feels distant. Now when you're writing and you've discovered, hey, I'm writing in passive voice, you can't always restructure the sentence, and in fact, you don't always want to restructure the sentence using the same words and just flipping. Sometimes you just have to gut the sentence and start again with the subject of your copy as the central focus. So let's look at this example. Caregiving can be a hard task to fulfill for many grown children. The sentence is fine. But if you're a senior care company writing a blog and you really want to connect with grown children who are caring for their parents and who might need a break, you want to make a connection. You want to write an active voice. So instead of just rephrasing the sentence, start over. Say something like, grown children like you know the challenges of caregiving. You see how there's a connection? They say, yes, I do know the challenges of caregiving. They're writing to me. So you find a connection. And really in marketing, that's what it's all about, connecting with your reader. That's why active voice is almost always preferred in marketing writing. Thanks guys, have a great week.